Remember some months ago, the L.A. County Board of Supervisors agreed to pay $4 billion. There were thousands of claims filed by people who said they were sexually abused decades ago in juvenile detention centers and foster homes that the L.A. County government ran. And there was a separate group of those who are suing. And they were represented by John Manley's law firm, Manley, Stewart Finaldi. And they made a settlement with L.A. County for another $828 million. So now we're looking at almost $5 billion. The first settlement, the $4 billion settlement, a few weeks ago, there were stories in the LA Times that 9 people said they were paid to sue, and 4 said they were told to fabricate their claims. All those lawsuits were filed by Downtown LA Law Group, who denied this. Now, this group is separate, and we're going to talk to John Manley about it. John, how are you?
Hey, John. Good to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm fine. I got a lot of strong feelings about all this, but I want you to explain, first of all, overall, what went on here for the decades.
Sure.
And how do we end up paying $5 billion that's going to take us decades to cover?
Yeah, there's 2 things here that are despicable. One is that the county, really beginning in the 80s, started these boot camps for kids. And they were kids that were truant, shoplifted a small item, largely black and Latino kids and the purpose was to get them on the right track. So literally you showed up in camouflage, you stood at attention, yes sir, no ma'am, etc. And the idea was to get them on the straight and narrow. What really happened is, and they were run by the LA County Probation Department. There were probation officers there. There were police officers, right? Guards. Yeah. And what happened with the women, and we only represented girls and women, is they got there and they basically had a cabal of these officers who just sexually assaulted and raped them. And we're talking about teenagers, 12 to 17. And we were the first people to file any of these cases, and we decided very early on that some of the cases were suspect and that we were only going to take female cases. It's not that male cases weren't legitimate, but things like, I was strip searched. Well, at the time, if you go to juvenile hall, you were strip searched. That's not abuse. Abuse is, I'm supposed to take care of you, and I use you sexually as a sex toy. That's abuse. So we limited our cases, and the other 2 firms, the Arias firm and the Panish firm, basically did the same thing. This is all my firm does. We've been doing it since '97, and so we filed these cases, and all of a sudden, there were firms out there signing up thousands of people. So, beginning 2 years ago, I started writing letters saying, this is not good. It's a felony to file a false claim against the county. And I started talking to the county's lawyers and saying, what are you doing here? This is wrong. These people some of these cases are absolutely valid, but some of them are bogus. And you guys need to look at this. And essentially the county, and I'm not blaming their outside lawyers, because I think this was instructions from the county. They just did nothing. They just let it happen. They negotiated this $4 billion settlement. They didn't take a single deposition of the other plaintiffs. They didn't. The statute that this was filed under, which was AB 218, has requirements that, for example, each of our clients had to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, be interviewed, and they had to declare that they had substantial belief, meaning they had to swear under penalty of perjury. They had a substantial belief this happened. About 2/3 of the way through the litigation in that other settlement, the county just took the guardrails off and said, you don't need to do that. They didn't take a single deposition. John, I've sued the Catholic Church, some of the the Larry Nassar case, the U.S. Olympic Committee. I've sued some of the largest institutions that care for children in the county over the last 35 years. I've never seen anything like this. And it was, they just let it happen. And, I actually raised it with the court on the record, and the judge in the case raised it with them. Months before the LA Times article, and I specifically called out DTLA, and I said, this is suspect. They have 2,500 claims. They're car crash lawyers. Where is this coming from? So, what's awful is that our clients, and I'm sure some of the other clients in the other cases, were actually abused. But you have a county. The county wants to blame these greedy lawyers. The county let it happen. And at the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday where this was approved, I listened to the county council talk about, greedy lawyers, and this is why this happened. At the end of the day, this happened because the county knew about this. In these cases in California, you don't just have to prove that the victim was abused. You have to prove the institution knew about it and did nothing. So the idea that this mess, this $5 billion disaster, is anything other than the county's fault is wrong. Now, the lawyers who did this and are accused of doing this, and there's two firms, if those allegations are true, those lawyers belong in jail. But what's really telling about this, about the county's involvement, is that they're not insisting that if this happened, the settlement be voided. What institution discovers this kind of fraud in a massive settlement for $4 billion? This is the largest sex abuse settlement in American history.
Well, what I'm thining is a few years. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, what I was going to say is, and they're not stopping it. They're just, okay, we're going to pay, and we're going to have some stuff. I mean, anybody else would say, whoa, we're not paying this. We got to look at this. Stop.
Well, why won't they take depositions in each individual case?
You don't even need to do that. They could have hired Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, Melvin and Myers, any five-star law firm, and let's say they charged them $100 million. They would have saved $1 billion. But they didn't do that. They just rolled over and paid. And so, to me, that entire settlement reeks. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just don't get it, and maybe I'm just not a very good advertiser, and I only got 200 cases. But I don't believe it. And the thing that makes the whole thing smell is nobody at the county is saying, hey,